you always leave the last one for yourself. How's it going, everybody? This is Jim Myborn. Welcome back to the Art Channel once again. Today, I would like to talk about some mistakes that I wish I knew earlier as an artist. So, I have been doing freelance illustration for a couple years now, and throughout that time, I've learned some things. Some things that made me better, and some mistakes that slowed me down quite a bit. So I would like to share those mistakes with you, and hopefully help you go a bit smoother on your art journey. And I'm not talking about like only theory stuff or things that I've been reading online, alright? This is actual mistakes that slowed me down as an artist. So if you're just starting out, or even if you've been drawing for a while and you feel stuck, there's a good chance that one of these will probably hit you. So without further ado, let's start with mistake number one, which is ignoring your fundamentals. Of course, this is the number one mistake. You know, I know you've probably heard it many times before, but there's a reason that it's in every video about artist mistakes, because it's the most common one. There is one difference that I would like to talk about, because when I'm talking about ignoring your fundamentals, I don't mean never studying your fundamentals. I mean thinking you're past them when you're not exactly. A lot of people hear fundamentals and they think just boring stuff like boxes, spheres, anatomy sheets, and value studies. Yeah, I know. It's so boring. I want to get to the cool stuff. So they rush through it or avoid it entirely because they just want to draw the cool things, right? But fundamentals are not just a phase that you complete and you're just done with it. They're not like a checklist. They are tools that you keep refining forever. Stuff like lighting, values, perspective, anatomy, composition, they're in every single drawing, whether you acknowledge them or not. Now, personally, I've done a lot of highly rendered pieces that looked impressive at first, but completely fall apart when you look at the structure or the lighting. I'm not afraid to show them. I'll show you one right now. Here, look at this one. Looks cool at first, sure, and then you notice the lighting is all over the place. Completely. Looks flat at the bottom, and there's perspective issues. And yes, it was a stylized piece, but that was not a style issue over here, okay? That was a fundamentals issue. Style sits on top of fundamentals. It does not replace them. So whenever you find that you have sat down and you have studied your fundamentals and you finally feel like you have a solid grasp on it, don't leave it at that. Don't make it as a checklist and, okay, I've studied my fundamentals, I don't need to study them anymore. Keep studying, keep learning, and refine those fundamentals, because there's always something that you can learn and refine. Mistake number two, accepting every piece of advice. I know, this one sounds a little dangerous, right? A little controversial, right? Because it's responsible. Probably why we don't see a lot of people talking about it. You know, you're being open, you're listening, you want to improve, right? Well, the problem is not all advice is equal. Now, I don't mean to sound arrogant or something when I say this, but through a lot of observation, I can conclude that a lot of people give advice based on, you know, things that they've heard somewhere, things that have worked for them just once or twice, or things that they just half understand. And not exactly from years of problem solving, deadlines, revisions, or professional feedback. So when you ask for critique in random groups or forums, what usually happens is 5 different people give you 5 different things. Some advice directly contradicts other advice, and none of it is filtered through experience most of the time. So instead of getting some sort of actual clarity and understanding, you just get kind of confused. And that's happened to me as well. Beginners and even intermediate artists often assume if someone sounds confident, then they must know what they're talking about. And that's just not how it works. A better question to ask is, has this person solved the problems that I'm struggling with? And why should you ask that question? Because it gives you some ground to stand on and credibility that this advice can help you. Like, if you need advice on how to treat your kidney disease, would you go accepting advice from a lawyer? No, you go to a nephrologist. Would you accept advice from someone claiming to be a nephrologist on the internet? No, you'd go to a nephrologist in a hospital. Same logic applies here. You should prioritize advice from professional artists, Artists with years of consistent work, ones whose results that you actually want, people who can explain why and not just what. One solid advice from someone who knows what they're doing is worth more than 100 mixed opinions from people at your level or below. Bad advice doesn't always stop your progress. Sometimes it just slows it down, and in certain circumstances, that's worse. But I do want to clarify, this doesn't mean that you should ignore everyone else. It just means that you need to filter advice, not collect it. Mistake number 3, not learning how to filter critique. So this ties directly into the last point. And this was hard because critique itself isn't bad, but misusing it is. Critique is a tool. And like any tool, if you don't know how to use it, you can hurt yourself. The biggest misunderstanding is most artists think critique works like this. More critique equals more improvement. That's false. And what happens without filtering is you could change things that were not broken. You could lose consistency in your style and you chase approval instead of solving problems, which is not healthy at all. And worst of all, you stop trusting your own judgment, which is why I think one of the most important skills you can develop is separating critique from opinion. Need I say there's a distinction to be made here? Critique explains why something isn't working and suggests a solution. Opinion is preference, disguised as an advice. In the context of art advice, that's what I want to clarify that one. And I do have a simple solution to that. When someone critiques your work, what you should be asking yourself are a few questions. First, did they explain why? Second, did they point to a specific problem? Third, can I test this advice objectively? Fourth, does this person's work back up what they're saying? If the answer is mostly no to these questions, then you can feel free to discard it. The thing is, I understand why so few people talk about it. Everyone is afraid of making themselves look like they're arrogant or looking like they think they're perfect, which is why most artists never learn the skill to filter critique. They just take the advice and don't question it. They just accept it at face value and call it a day, thinking that they're making progress, but you're doing the exact opposite. Filtering critique is not ignoring feedback. It's deciding what to apply, what to save for later, and what to throw away completely. Mistake number 4, thinking more hours equals more skill. This is a very common artist trap. I know most content creators have talked about this too. So people seem to think, if I just draw more, I'll get better. So they grind. And then they start to wonder why they feel stuck, why their work barely changes, and why their improvement is painfully slow. When you're just drawing without intent, what you're basically doing is reinforcing mistakes. What I like to say about this is this: practice doesn't make perfect, practice makes permanent. If you repeat the same mistake for 10,000 hours, you don't become skilled exactly. You become more efficient at being wrong. And here's why this happens. You already know what kind of works, right? When you don't know what to improve, you kind of default to comforts and habits. So your brain kind of goes on autopilot. The real improvement comes from intentional practice, not raw time. And that means, first of all, slowing down. Then, targeting specific weaknesses, studying fundamentals, and being uncomfortable on purpose, which in turn means getting out of your comfort zone. You can draw characters for 5 years and still not understand anatomy, perspective, lighting, or value control because you never stopped to study them. You just kept drawing, which is exactly what I did. I drew since 2017 without studying nothing. I did not improve. I just learned more about my drawing program. That's it. What actually works is, instead of asking how many hours did I draw today, ask yourself, how did I improve today? An example of that might be understanding form better, fixing proportion issues, or improving your edge control. So ask yourself that question. Is the answer yes? That's progress. So remember this: skill is not measured in hours. It's measured in intent and direction. Mistake number 5, digging for an art style too early. Again, this is a very common obsession for many artists out there, mostly beginners, but even some intermediate ones as well. Being impatient to develop an art style that is yours and yours alone. First, we need to understand what an art style is. An art style is unique. It's a consistent and recognizable depth of visual choices that represent your subject matter through your own vision. Now, if you're early in your art journey and you know your fundamentals aren't great yet, you don't have a solid workflow, therefore you don't really have a vision per se. So how do you really develop an art style without vision? You have to have your vision established in mind before you can develop a personal art style that is intentional. And it all ties back to the fundamentals once again. You need to have solid fundamentals before you can have a clear vision to develop your art style. So when you chase a style too early, you usually end up hiding your weaknesses instead of confronting them head on and turning them into assets instead of weaknesses. Weaknesses like bad anatomy, weak perspective, flat lighting, and poor construction, they kind of start getting masked by heavy line styles or exaggerated proportions, as well as oversimplification. And at that point, stylization is kind of being used as an excuse. It becomes something like a camouflage. You don't need to master your fundamentals fully beforehand, but you need to know how to draw things properly first. Follow the rules by improving your fundamentals. And when said fundamentals are solid, then you can break the rules by stylizing. However, fundamentals are not the only thing. You need inspiration. I know all these things, fundamentals, rules, and all that sounds jarring, it's scary. So you need to keep your inspiration up and your drive to create. I'm sure you have at least one artist that you look up to, right? So, yes, along with your fundamentals, get your inspiration from that cool artist that you follow and study their work. Or multiple artists. Gathering proper references is a skill in and of itself, and that deserves a whole different video. But anyway, you can make cool artwork without knowing what cool artwork looks like beforehand. Mistake number 6, comparing your work to others. Another big one. Comparing your work to someone else is probably the most destructive mistake out of all. It's just never fair. You have no idea how long this person has been drawing, what it took for them to get good, how long it took, who taught them, and maybe even how many even people guided them. Art is not just the expression of a person. Art in and of itself is the story of the person behind it. Their process, their art style, the decisions they made, they all subtly tell the artist's story. And everyone has a different story. Some people started art at 5, 6 years old, continued drawing until 14, went into art school, got private teachers, and just in general spent a lot of time, intentional and deliberate time, learning to draw and to paint. And you, just like me, giving myself as an example again, who got a drawing tablet at 17, drew on and off for fun until 23 years old, then decided to learn fundamentals and started drawing seriously and went professional at 24, then sat down to make this dumbass video for you at 25. We have nothing in common in the way that our stories are completely different. Not just our backgrounds, the way we approached art, the way we treated and went about it is different. I'm definitely guilty of comparing my work to others. I was like, damn, this guy's work is so good. Mine ain't even on that level and they're the same age as me. And then I look at how long they've been drawing. I'm like, wow, 10 years? I've been drawing for 6 months. It's totally fair to get inspired by them, but please stick to being inspired by them, okay? Don't compare your actual work to theirs. A better thing to compare is the workflow or the process. Compare that, because it can help you improve yours, and in turn, come to a more desirable outcome for your own art. If you really want to compare something, compare your own work. Your work now versus 6 months ago. And if you see progress, you're doing good, bruh. The hard truth is there will always be someone better than you. That includes professionals and hobbyists alike. But every time that little devilish, disgusting voice starts to whisper in my head, "You'll never be good enough, like this artist that you look up to," I respond with the quote, "Comparison is a thief of joy." Mistake number 7, misunderstanding dissatisfaction. For a long time, I thought feeling unsatisfied means that my work was bad. But a lot of the time, dissatisfaction actually means that your taste and your standards have improved faster than your work. And I want to expand a bit on this because it messes with a lot of artists mentally. A lot of people think, I don't like this piece, therefore it's bad. Or, I don't like my art anymore, therefore I'm getting worse. And as artists, we are our biggest critics. But most of the time, that's not what's happening. What's usually happening is that your standards have improved faster than your ability to execute them. You can now see what's wrong. Lighting, anatomy, construction, or composition. but you don't yet have full control over how to fix it. And that gap feels awful. It manifests into frustration, disappointment, sometimes even burnout. But that gap could actually be proof of growth. But think about it. If you were truly stagnant, would you even be able to notice these problems? I don't think so. You'd be perfectly happy with work that has clear issues, because you wouldn't have the visual library or understanding to see them. As ridiculous as that might sound, dissatisfaction with your work means your eye is ahead of your hand. And what actually helped me was identifying why I don't like it. Once you can name the problem, it stops being this stupid, vague emotional weight, and it turns into a technical issue that you can solve, or at least aim to next time. If you hate your work but can explain exactly why, you're doing fine. If you love your work and can't see any issues ever, that's when you should worry. And I'm not saying you shouldn't love your work. Just keep in mind that there's always room for improvement and to stay humble about it. To sum it all up, learn the basics, choose your mentors carefully, stop rushing, and stop comparing. That alone will put you ahead of most people. I truly hope this video was helpful to someone out there at any stage of their art journey. Thank you for watching and listening to what I hope was some useful advice. If you've ever received advice that completely threw you off or slowed you down, I'd be curious to hear about it. So leave a comment about the worst advice that you've ever received as an artist. And if you want more videos like this, leave a like and subscribe. Click the bell for notifications so you don't miss any future videos. And I'll see you folks next time.